The recording has stopped.
Pass-through derivatives or derivatives of affects, or I don't know how you would formulate that, to be honest.
Say that again.
Like,
sorry?
don't they?
Say that again.
Don't derivatives also have affects or something?
Do derivatives have affect? I don't know. It sounds like a great title for a short story.
I bet there's someone writing a PhD thesis on that right now in a cultural studies department.
Do derivatives dream of affect?
Of electric affects.
Do derivatives dream of electric affect? That's gonna be my next story. I'm gonna put that in the show notes.
No, but it was the argument though, right? That like derivatives are interesting because they don't like they don't stop at quantification.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
But I'm not like, that's the part like I think will be probably unpacked in the second half.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think when I read the second half, I'll probably start back at 42, thesis 42 or 43. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But sorry, Marianne, what is this Grimesian thing that you brought up here? She's terribly obnoxious, you know.
I think it's a reference to a tweet that Grimes, or it was like a vlog actually. It was like a short little video clip she posted of herself,
mm-hmm.
talking about like, it was basically someone commented that it was a good summary of Aaron Bastani's fully automated luxury communism book, like in like 30 seconons.
Right. Yeah. But, that automation is going to be great for everyone, and my husband's going to be king of the world.
Elon Musk is her husband, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. It's funny, you say being a punk on the Upper East Side. It's like, but like, whereas punk had come from the cities. Nowadays, if you go to like New York City and you see anyone who's dressed like a punk, they're just kind of like adopted the fashion styles. If you want to like find real punks like in North America now, and I don't know about Europe, you probably have to go out like these small towns, these kind of forgotten, backward places where where the real punks now hang around in the parking lots of the gas stations and stuff. It's even if they don't look and dress like punk or even listen to the right music, I mean it's so you can't really imagine finding that in Manhattan or even Brooklyn anymore.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Upper East Side punk. There was that great Matthew Lillard movie, Salt Lake City Punk, from the late 90s.
I remember that one. Isn't that the one where he has a bunch of acid in his pocket and he runs through a sprinkler and it like just all soaks into him?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but that sounds like it could be it. Maybe that's worth a revisit.
Yeah.
SLC punk. Mm-hmm.
One thing I don't want to go back too much to this, but like Mike, you mentioned that but just going back to Massumi saying we need to go past the labor theory of value. I get a little hung up on it because Mike, you mentioned like the falling rate of Heinrich's critical sort of stance on the falling rate of profit. And how, like you said, you didn't really feel that to be the case when we look around today. Mm-hmm. But like, I guess I would make over two-pronged response. I would say that like the financial markets and the stock markets are doing great, but like the level of investment is very low, and the general profit rate for industry is much low. Has been just pretty much going down. There was a blip in the 90s during the computer manufacturing and tech boom, but like by and large, like. Yeah, just the general profit rate for industry has been declining since the late 60s. The stock market, goes up and down, but it's really strong today. But I mean, there is a case to be made just empirically. I mean, Robert Brenner's work is sort of an illustration of this, but there's a lot of other sort of empirically minded Marxists. There's a guy named Michael Roberts who has a blog that but. Yeah, I mean, there's good empirical evidence for the idea that the profit rate is falling, and it's hard to say whether that's because there's a growing organic composition of capital, meaning that there's less people employed in each enterprise, and if labor is the only exploitable input, then it would make sense for the profit rate to be falling. Also, though, just overproduction due to so much competition is another causal factor that doesn't really depend on the labor theory of value. But the second part of the response would be someone who was defending the labor theory of value wouldn't necessarily say that labor is so inherently special it produces all value, sort of the orthodox Ricardian position. They would say that when a capitalist enterprise goes to buy all of its inputs, it buys the means of production like machines or technology or just raw materials. It buys that from other capitalists. Those capitalists have already marked up that price when they're selling it to you. The only thing that's not really marked up is labor, because labor doesn't have a strong bargaining position. It has to sell itself or else it'll starve. Unless it's organized really strongly in unions, which it's not anymore. It's cheap. It's just a inherently cheap input just based on its bad bargaining position. So like, it doesn't mean that labor is like metaphysically special. It just means that of all the inputs, it's the cheapest and it has the most use value because it's so versatile and multifunctional. Like the human mind and body are way more multifunctional than any other single input. So like those two factors kind of do make labor a special input. Special input to the production process. And when you look at profit rates of clothes manufacturing that have a low organic composition of capital, meaning they have a lot of workers compared to the technology, the profit rates are really high in those. They're just driven down by over competition. But like capital still flock, even like people like JP Morgan and stuff still talk about how that's always an industry you need to have a lot invested in because it's just a dependable source of income. It's not, So I think there's something to be,
Right. I guess one can be easily mystified today when one looks at, when constantly bombarded with these figures of like what the top, 1% and 0.1% have made in the last few months or years. And we used to talk about millions and billions. Now, we throw around the T word like it ain't no thing. And and I guess, you'd be, it's easy to believe that, profits are still, sky high as ever, just going to fewer and fewer hands. But
it's true only for the avant-garde of the economy, meaning like Wall Street, financial markets, tech, and a lot of that's monopoly. There's monopoly factors going into that too. Having intellectual property rights over something keeps competition out, which artificially sustains high profits basically. Monopolies or any kind of gatekeeping position, right?
I guess that Aaron Bananev also tries to show that one of the phenomenon responsible for what seemingly is a falling rate of profit is not the increase of automation, which is the easy story, but it was the decrease in overall output. If you look at the recent period in comparisons, like the last 50 years, and like all these, like his big thing is that all these automation stories look at data from like the last 10 years, and that's it, and that makes a very different picture from when you look at it in the past. But I think it was like talking about the labor theory of value that started this particular group in certain ways, and we kind of never really did the labor theory of value kind of its service before all these things. So that could be something worth turning back to in a future talk.
I've always, my stance has always been like, on a sort of philosophical level, it doesn't make sense, but it weirdly it has a lot of empirical support in the world economy in a way, but only at a macro scale. So like it almost makes sense at a macro scale, but not at a micro scale.
This might be really simplistic, but like one of the reasons I thought that I understood that Heinrich wanted to move past the labor theory of value is because that in a revolutionary sense, all it really amounts to is labor asking for a larger share of the profits, but still maintaining the capital relations.
And he calls that worldview Marxism.
It's basically it's just nicer Marxism, happier Marxism. It's nicer capitalism or friendlier, less mean capitalism, but it doesn't change, the productive organization of society in favor of everyone being able to share in the wealth that we're all collectively creating.
Right. But I mean, Heinrich. So he basically he abandons the idea that the Ricardian aspect of Marx, and he looks towards like you said, all three volumes. Capital's a full circuit. It doesn't value is not just produced in the act of production. It's only value when it's registered in the exchange process. But he also, in his book, he does follow Marx in saying that labor is a unique output in that labor is a unique input in that its use value and its exchange value are so different. Other inputs, Marx's model is really simplified. It's a very simple. He's doing that on purpose in the sense that like basic simple algebraic equations. They don't really grasp all of reality. They simplify it drastically. Marx's theory of labor being the unique input that creates value is like that. It's just saying that since it's the one commodity on the market that doesn't have bargaining power to mark itself up like all the other ones do, that it's inherently cheaper, but it's also more inherently, he calls it variable capital. It's inherently versatile. You can switch people around more easily than you can switch machinery around into new configurations. So, I think there's something to be said.
Right. It's also the only productive commodity whereby you're paying for one thing. In this case, you're paying for the subsistence level of the worker, so
Exactly.
that his entire day and weekly cycle is structured around how much time he can work and how much time he needs to get ready for work again. But even that's what you're paying for. What you're getting out is the value of the labor power. So you're paying for the value, and the value of the laborer is how much he or she needs to survive, and that's always less than the value of the labor power. And no other commodity can really do that.
Right. The other commodity you're just paying for up front, and it's already been through a bunch of capitalist processes where it gets marked up at each point. So in Marx's sort of idealized model, if you had a fully automated factory, and you were buying all the inputs from other capitalists that had already been marked up, it wouldn't really be very profitable unless you could corner a market or have a monopoly position.
There's temporary advantages, obviously.
Yeah.
But in the long run, competition. Yeah, as soon as I find some great new piece of technology and implement it, eventually my competitor, it'll become the standard that any capitalist who wants to enter my market will have to get in order to get started.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of capitalism is commercial capitalism, right? Just buying and reselling and shit like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think in that case, that's why Marx generally, at least in volume 1, will always start looking at industrial capitalism first. As this, this is where it starts. This is where without this, you can't have that. But I mean, because commercial capitalism existed long before capitalism properly took over. I mean, there was always buying for less, moving and selling for more.
Yeah.
That existed
Arbitrage.
that kind of in that thread that I forget that thread, these things, a lot of the markets existed, all these things only when they took over and started to subsume all of society in these processes did we get the big C cap. It would be fun if one day we chose a text we all agreed in advance we didn't like, I don't know,
would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about it. I haven't read this Bastani the book, but I know it gets a lot of people make fun of it all the time.
I mean that would probably be one I think that none of us
think.
What is
From
it?
what I've heard about it, I don't think
fully automated luxury communism.
Okay.
So I mean, don't know it, but from the title, I'm imagining your robots do all the work and we sit around drinking Mai Tais all day.
That's right.
Marx. Discussing all the ins and the details of the minutes of all the later internationals and all the infighting that went on between them. Well, we have Mai Tais and shrimp cocktails, and the robots do all the work.
Yeah.
And once a day we all have to go pray to Elon Musk. And once a year sacrifice a virgin to him and Grimes.
I found this text really interesting. I don't think I gave it as much time as I wish I would have. So some of it I didn't quite grasp, but I think overall I had a hard time relating a lot of it to certain fields or certain aspects. I mean, for instance, I work in construction, and it was really hard to try and relate things he was talking about to real world that, like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. I was just talking the other day to my uncle who is freaking out. He's a farmer and has like a small family farm and is freaking out because of droughts that are going on here, obviously getting worse by the week. And just thinking about like the way that crop prices are determined, especially like for him. And anyway, it was really hard to take anything from those chapters and like his way of using new vocabulary, or you know, or at least like updating it, was really hard to translate to like certain fields, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I still found it very interesting and useful, but there were parts that I was like trying to think, okay, how would this look differently? And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if this is directly related to the text, but like, you know, when the prices of very standard commodities like lumber, and like lumber, it was kind of shot up and then crashed down recently. I mean,
it's still really high.
Yeah, I mean,
Here.
so yeah, so these effects, you know, can be the results of real world circumstances. For example, major parts of you know, a blight in a lot of wood, or they could be the result of, you know, financial maneuverings that are completely detached from real world circumstances. So even though nothing's actually happened to your farm or to this lumber field, you know, the prices are going to swing wildly, and that's going to have lots of real world effects in, you know, in terms of work. And then of course work is now is, you know, and the price of lumber and work are not isolated things, but then the people who work and then their outside work lives. And as Massumi says, there's all these, you know, tons of factors that will all, you know, kind of coalesce. And so, you know, so in that sense, I don't know if this is directly from the book, but you know, it's evidence that the financial system, speaking to itself, arguing with itself, making deals with itself, and sending prices up and down in crazy directions for itself, and only for the potential profit of the few people who own financial assets, but everybody else gets affected, right? And I guess in potentially Massumi's post-capitalist world, this wouldn't be the case, because we would not be organizing society for the purpose of, you know, valorizing, you know, exchange and creating profit. And, you know, we would be organizing society first and foremost around like, what are the ways we can create the conditions where the vitality of life can flourish freely, and then how do we guide, you know, the lumber industry or agriculture in order to meet those needs. But then again, that just sounds like a really, really simple criticism of capitalism, doesn't it? Just like, oh, you know, let's organize society for people, not for profits. And
yeah. I mean, in order for that to happen, there would have to be, you know, just in the US, so many upper middle class people who'd be willing to give up a lot of their incredibly comfy life.
Yeah. Well, what's that line? You will own nothing and you will be happy, right? Yeah.
Random fact, I was going to say that I believe the use of derivatives originated from the agricultural markets in Chicago. I think it was farmers that originally used them to kind of hedge
futures.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right. And if you read that, like that Taibbi book that talks about the history of it, from like the 20s onward, there was a limited position that hedgers can take, that, you know, like 20%. So as real producers and real wholesale buyers would still get to buy and sell 80% of all the futures. And I believe it was either end of Bush or Clinton, who, along with other kind of deregulatory acts, and no, all hedge, you know, get rid of this 80-20% limit. You know, whether you're a producer or you're a wholesale buyer or you're just a financial speculator, it's all the same. Go ahead. And the problem there is, you know, things like corn and sugar and wheat, you don't want that price to go up. But if you're investing in something, you know, you just up is the only way to go. But, you know, when corn feeds people, you know, these create huge problems as well.
Shorted as well, I guess, right?
Yeah. And not to mention that all the, you know, these speculators, you know, they're never going to actually take possession of any of this corn. So you have
No.
like these material things that haven't been born yet, you know, or they're sitting in warehouses, but their spirit side, their financial spirits are, you know, shooting around the world all the time, while their material bodies are just kind of like sitting and hopefully not going to rot.
Yeah, it's kind of like last year. Remember when there was that oil glut and like funds were having to pay people to take the oil off their hands.
Right,
like oil
right.
prices went negative.
Yeah, because you know, when you think of oil futures and oil derivatives, we only think in terms of the abstract numbers. But then all of a sudden, here was an encounter with the real, where it's like, no, you know, we can't afford to keep it. You have to take possession of this. This is costing us in terms of warehouse space and temperature and this. It's like, wait a second, I got to take the oil. Yeah, I mean, that would have been that could have been a brilliant, spectacular and specular episode of like the madness of the system if somehow like a bunch of bankers, you know, receive deliveries of just barrels of oil and drown them in it or something.
Oil and corn.
Yeah. Well, have you seen? Sorry, digression. But what was that Harrison Ford movie, Witness? One of the bad guys gets killed in a corn silo.
Oh yeah,
one of the great movie deaths of the, like, I guess early 80s maybe. Yeah. It's an Amish movie, so you know that has its own critique of capitalism, the Amish community being outside of it, but the evil gangsters, you know, come in and they meet their untimely death by corn silo.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, it's not the greatest movie, but you know.
Okay, what do we do next time?
Yeah. Next, suggested texts for next time. Mariana, didn't you have a suggestion?
preferably an unmuted suggestion.
Oh, is it muted?
Yeah. In the email, no. I mean, I forgot. To be honest, we I don't know.
Yeah,
that
well,
was sent like a month ago, I think. Sorry, I don't recall.
Right. Well, I guess. So you want to take a vote? Who wants to finish this for the next time, or not? We're 1, 2, we're 5.
I will finish it either way, and it's nice to talk about it. But I'm also happy to talk about something else.
I'll finish it.
Yeah, we could.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I'd like to see if there's anything to it, or if it's a dead end. Because I've been leaning towards the latter, to be honest. But no, I feel like I should at least give it a full read.
Yeah,
I don't want to also not get stuck in a whole blockchain discussion or something, but I do think that this move to sort of find post-capitalism in the center of capitalism is kind of interesting, and I wonder where that goes. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, me too. Especially, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I've just also been thinking a lot about thinking about post-capitalism on a macro level, like everyone would like to get rid of it everywhere, versus like in smaller iterations, like trying to get rid of I don't know. I guess specifically, like at work for me, I mean, just to be brief, like we function at our shop where everybody gets like an hourly wage, which is actually pretty good in the US. It's like $22 an hour, but that everyone every month gets on top of that. Like, first of all, we don't have an owner, so
are you a co-op, a cooperative?
It kind of is. I mean, it's I guess we don't call it that, mostly because nobody else at our shop knows what a co-op is.
What does it sell?
We do granite and quartz. We manufacture, polish, install. But basically, like at the end of every month, we take like any profit the company has, and everyone just decides, like, does everyone want bonuses this month, or coming up, we have to invest in more equipment or whatever. But, and I mean, it's still within the capitalist structure, and we're still, but
well, when you take it to market, it's capital. Internally, you don't function with capitalist wage relations, and you all democratically make decisions. But then, of course, with your finished product, then you got to go out and play the game.
Right. And so it's kind of it feels better. And also, I mean, everyone at the shop has never had a job they enjoy more, because you're not just, you feel less exploited when you're not just, working for the wage and then you don't see any of the profit. You hope you're getting.
I want to come down and work for you guys.
Yeah, right.
Sounds great.
Yeah, because, and then also, like, we determine, okay, do people want to work more this upcoming summer? Do we want to take on more contracts? Do we want to, everyone's sick of this company Pulte. I know we make a lot of money from them, but do we just want to fire them as a customer because nobody likes dealing with their shit? Okay.
Yeah. And
we did.
And that's something you could talk about also, like with Dennis, what you're doing at the Foundry too. I mean, Foundry's not a business, but nonetheless, shared decision making.
Yeah.
Trying to function with some autonomy inside of
these pockets. And I guess the question, Brian, what you might want to talk about is, like, is the future kind of a proliferation of these pockets until they no longer become pockets, they all overlap and we take over, or these pockets still existing in overall market economies, will they, you're lucky if you're in one, but it's not gonna have any societally changing effects.
And maybe so, but even I thought, I mean, like 4 of the guys that we hired just in the past year are all between 18 and 22 years old. And this is like the first real job they've ever had. And I thought, they're going to go to jobs after this job expecting that. And they're going to say, like, what the fuck? How come I, So I don't know. It's anyway, just that was just an example of like whether a macro post-capitalist world or like trying to make, or both at the same time. But
right, because I guess even in your industry, you're competing against other companies that likely are structured, according to a capitalist wage relation, where all the profits go to, certain owners. So, like, you exist in a relationship with your competitors, because that will determine, the market and the prices and the availability of customers.
Right.
So, is there any? I guess the interesting question would be, like, is there any kind of advantage you have, or disadvantage you have, in competing with traditionally capitalist organizations?
One big advantage we have, without getting into too much detail, is quality and timing. Because while a similar company, they might say our turnaround time is 3 weeks, as long as we can get the material, like, we can turn it around in 4 days, and we do a much higher quality. Like, a lot of builders who use another company end up calling us to go do services on their work.
There's less interest on your part to, like, cut corners and
right. And we don't make a whole lot of return trips to go back and fix stuff, so they know they might pay a higher price for us, but they're going to get it on time. They're going to get it. And I mean, really, we turn away a lot of customers that we either used to have or are asking for us, just because we aren't ready to grow that much right now. So,
and I guess too, like, as opposed to a capitalist organization where you're an atomized employee and you have all your other atomized employees, and you're all given your individual jobs in order to produce commodity as efficiently as possible according to a formula. They're like Massumi, like, I'm sure that you're all bringing together, like, a variety of backgrounds, skills, and experiences. And because you're not all working for one person or one entity, there's a lot more room to then leverage, to use Massumi's words, these kind of emergent effects of all your activities and experiences and personalities and interests, and valorize them still eventually in a market exchange, but nonetheless, this working together and being able to be more attuned to what might emerge from it, and then being more flexible than to shift the way you do things according to these emergent results. seems
Right.
seems like that is an opportunity for to in order to have a competitive advantage over.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's all very true. I think, I mean, we've been doing this now for 3 years, since we all used to work at a similar company together,
Mhm.
and all left at the same time, and then because it was awful, and then the company folded within like a month, which was
Mhm.
a little satisfying.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest advantage we have is just workplace, like nobody is ever pissed off when you come into work, and like that's a huge advantage, you know. I don't know.
That's hilarious. I just did a marketing job recently where I had to write a paper on like how to write surveys to measure employee engagement levels. It's like real nefarious marketing shit, but it's like, I'm happy to come into work is one of the questions. I look forward to Mondays.
I went in last Saturday just
I would be
because
willing to come in on the weekend I'd be willing to stay late. And of course, I mean, in a situation where like a co-op or a co-op type thing, I can imagine I'd answer much more favorably to those kind of questions than if I worked for.
Right. Or we had somebody had car problems, and like we all just said, hey, before he came in one day, we said, like, is everybody cool if we like just give him kind of a like grand bonus, because first of all, how's he going to get to work without, and second of all, like, I mean, he needs it and we don't, and like we make plenty of money. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ours is a unique situation, but
yeah. Well, that's that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to come work in an organization like that one day.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So next text.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say there's one recommendation I have. Maybe not for. Well, if we're gonna do this next time, this could be in the future. But just we were just talking about like what does Massumi really have in mind for the other side, like after capitalism, and like I think you said, Mike, that is the way you stated it correctly, but it was very vague. But there's one essay that's not vague about how to reorganize. It focuses on food production. What would food production look like organized for use value and not for profit or exchange value? And how much would really have to change? It's Jasper Burns. The essay is called "The Belly of the Revolution." It's on his website for free. But that's one of the most concrete attempts to think through what it would look like to reconvert production for use rather than value. And he sort of comes out of that New Marx reading also, sort of Heinrich sympathetic. So like it sort of a value form theorist who's really looking practically at what needs to change. And it's quite radical, the amount of things that need to change. But yeah, that's a good example of like practical kind of utopian or thinking that I would recommend.
Really interesting.
Yeah. It's much more concrete than Massumi for sure, because he talks about farming practices and farming technologies and things like that.
Do you think that in addition to the second half of the thesis is too much reading for one?
It's a longer essay. I think it's like maybe 30-40 pages. It's not a short one.
Yeah, so let's not combine it with anything else.
We probably should separate them, yeah. But yeah, that would be good maybe for not next, but next.
Right. So is anyone objecting to finishing this then?
No, I'd finish it.
Then
yeah.
Okay.
How as far as timing, when do you want to do it?
Well,
like we want to do.
Yeah, we didn't plan this one at the end of the last one. It kind of just we all said we'd go back to the emails.
What if we said like one week or something?
1 week?
We're not going to do every week, right? Are we? I mean,
maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks would be better for me.
Okay, sure, 2 weeks.
Right, and let's start a new email thread because it's getting really crazy. This one.
Yeah.
Can some just for Burns? There it is. Okay, got it already.
Ahuehuete panels, Ahuehuete, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we need to discuss that now, but I think it's the 9th of July. I think it's going to be Alan, and then oh,
Oh, right. I mean, I mean, I'm into our value group. I don't know if I can commit fully to the surveillance one because of my timing and.
but that's going to be a roundtable thing. That's like 3 invited guests that like talk to each other because they both all work in like relevant fields, and it's more like curated than this.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think Mariana also wants to ask if we want to do a curated panel or something at some point. I'm not sure if that's what she means, but maybe. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'd always also reconvene on the email.
Yeah.
And for that.
Okay, but so in 2 weeks we're gonna finish this book. Was that the consensus?
I can
so.
sense.
And then after that we have a couple of like directions we might go. One is like real liberty of value, like fucking Ricardo, or Jasper Burns, which looks
Yeah,
like
I mean, so Jasper Burns for a practical post-capitalist talk. Maybe a bit of Ricardo in conversation with Heinrich. Bring them together. So instead of like really delving deep into like Smith and Ricardo, like just pull out some passages and bring it into conversation with something modern.
That's fun.
Yeah. And
does like this time of day work for people, or?
Yeah.
For me, yes.
I mean, we can figure out specifics in the email, but just in general, if this works for everybody.
Yeah, this is great for me.
Yeah, for me
Cool.
too.
Yeah. I mean, we could say tentatively right now the 24th, same time, but we'll set up an email and we can do details then.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good.
What do we do with the recording? Put it somewhere?
Yeah. It gets emailed to me, I don't know, like an hour or two after. But if we want to put it on.
Yeah, or maybe even just for myself to like maybe re-listen to some of it before our next one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll share the link in an email and we can figure it out from there.
All right, great.
All right, guys.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
Cheers.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Bye.
Good night.